Namaskar and welcome to the episode number 23 of the Indology podcast. If you ask somebody who's Khusru Khan, you'll probably be met with a blank stare. Even students of history, they're not aware of this personality called Khusru Khan. Who is this Khusru Khan? Who is this mysterious person who has a bittersweet story, who saw a lot of tragedy, and yet towards the end he did triumph over the odds that life had thrown his way? We will get to know this story today, as written by Swatantra Veer Savarkar. When, in the reign of Alauddin, Gujarat had to face the first onslaught of the Muslims in 1298 CE, and the governing authority of the Hindus was much shaken down, in the chaotic conditions that prevailed, a very tender, attractive, but very brilliant Hindu youth had been captured and made a slave by the Muslim noblemen, and was offered into the services of Alauddin, much the same way and for the same reason as Malik Kafur was made a slave. After having been captured and converted to Islam, he was first called Hassan when he was taken in the service of Alauddin at Delhi, in keeping with the social vice of the Muslims, that is, sodomy. The great noblemen and generals of the court had unnatural sexual relations with him, and so they were extremely solicitous about serving his whims. When, after Alauddin's death in 1316 CE, Malik Kafur became the chief administrator, he also came to have great regard for his abilities. Very soon, Hassan was given the title of Khushru Khan. For even in the days of Alauddin, he was being sent independently on some small military expeditions in charge of small troops. That Hassan should become Khushru Khan and then a general in the army so rapidly bespeaks of his exceptional qualities. But more than these qualities, of the limitless love that Mubarak, the son of Alauddin, bore towards this charming young man. So after both Alauddin and Malik Kafur died or were dispatched, Mubarak got the Sultanate of Delhi, mainly with Khusru Khan's assistance, and quite naturally all the reins of the government passed easily into the hands of Khushru Khan, the dearest, the ablest and the most trustworthy young nobleman of Mubarak's court. And young Khushru Khan too proved wholly efficient in the discharge of his responsible job. Mubarak was vicious and pleasure-seeking by nature. Therefore he considered it a godsend gift to have such an efficient assistant in the person of Khushru Khan to run the whole administration, and especially a loyal executive to manage his private affairs in the harem. When in the court of Delhi, the attractive Malik Kafur, who was born a Hindu but converted by Alauddin to Islam, became later on the commander-in-chief and an astute politician, practically at the same time rose another young handsome Hindu convert, Khushru Khan, who after the death of Malik Kafur wielded all authority at the court of Delhi. In a similar way and simultaneously enough, rose a third figure in the political circles at Delhi, who was equally important, able, and who managed the affairs of the state only with the twitch of her eyebrows and a sidelong glances. The former Hindu princess of Gujarat and the sometime wife of Shankardev Yadav of Devagiri, namely Deval Devi. Of these three Hindu converts, Malik Kafur seems later on to have wholly turned a Muslim, even mentally, completely forgetting his Hindu origin, the Hindu blood running through his veins, his Hindu parentage, let alone his love for all these things. But Khushru Khan and this royal princess of Gujarat, Deval Devi, seem to have borne in their mind not only the memory but a love, a fascination for their Hindu origins, their Hindu blood, and their essential Hindu makeup. There seems to be rankling in their hearts, intermittently or continuously, the atrocities inflicted on them by the Muslims. It seemed to burst out through their actions. At last, it is because of their irrepressible yearning to avenge the wrongs done to their Hindutva that in Delhi itself broke out that great conflagration which, like the wildfire of Khandav forest of Mahabharat, reduced to ashes the Muslim Sultanate, which had under its sway practically the whole of India, if only for a short while. In the very first expedition of Alauddin against Gujarat, after the Gujarat ruler's defeat, his crowned queen, Kamal Devi, fell into the hands of Alauddin while she was fleeing for safety. But the ruler, however, could effect his escape along with his princely daughter, Deval Devi, who was a mere child then. In that tender age, hatred for the Muslims must have been engraved deeply on her bosom because of other people's and her own actual experience. Her very mother, Rani Kamal Devi, had become the beloved queen of Sultan Alauddin at Delhi, and that very mother of hers was now out to seize her and make her a Muslim. How painful must this news have been to her tender heart. In order to evade this terrible fate, she was married to Ramdev Rao's son Shankardev, the staunch follower of Hinduism. But her evil star did not leave her alone there. In one of the invasions of Malik Kafur against the Hindus, she was caught and carried away to Delhi as a captive. She must have been smarting with pain and humiliation 100,000 times in that moment of despair. At last, on reaching Delhi, she was forced to marry Khusru Khan, the eldest son of Alauddin. Some writers vouch that Deval Devi and Khusru Khan greatly loved each other, but this seems to be the flattering way of the courtly writers. Her subsequent course of action makes it abundantly clear, but that shrewd Hindu princess seems to have affected her love for Islam and for her husband till she got the desired opportunity. It becomes crystal clear from the latter part of her life that after all the atrocities and persecutions, she was constantly worshipping the Hindu god. Even after being forced to marry Alauddin's eldest son, the mental agonies of Deval Devi did not cease. For immediately after Alauddin's death, there was a revolution in which Alauddin's second son, Mubarak, attacked and blinded his brother along with his followers and then put them to death. Installing himself as the Sultan, he seized his brother's wife, Deval Devi, and forced her to marry him. This alone seems to be the civilized and polite tradition of the Muslim sultans and emperors, to marry again the fairest of queens and wives of the late sultans or emperors, dead or put to death. This way did the former Hindu princess Deval Devi rise to the higher status of the sultana. However, she abhorred Mubarak most bitterly, yet she had perforce to keep marital relations with him. Although her precious body was thus continually defiled, she had the most favorite opportunity of her life owing to this marriage of hers with Mubarak. In gaining the Sultanate of Delhi, Mubarak had mainly to depend on the former Hindu slave, who later on was forced to become a Muslim and who now had become the commander-in-chief of the whole Sultanate of Delhi, namely Khushru Khan. Mubarak himself had willingly entrusted the whole administration to Khushru Khan, for he had no time to mind other things except every sort of depravity and vice. For instance, he was extremely fond of dressing like a woman, going to the great noblemen of the court with a whole band of dancing girls and there dancing himself, or having dancing in musical concerts over there. So while this licentious Mubarak was fully engrossed with his various vices, his chief minister of state, Khushru Khan, who had the burning memory of his former Hindu life and his present wife, but the former Hindu princess, Deval Devi, who had similar thoughts and tendencies and similar mishaps in life as the former, both being Gujarati Hindus originally, had the greatest opportunity of coming into the closest contact, of developing the strongest love ties and the greatest confidence in each other. They could carry on the day-to-day political intrigues and plans, authoritatively and with impunity even, in the solitude of the innermost secret chambers of the Sultan's private palace. It has to be taken for granted from the later course of events that it is there that they must have hatched some important conspiracy for the benefit of Hinduism. The first proof that contributes to this assertion is that Khushru Khan appointed his former Hindu Parvar brother to the governorship of Gujarat, his native province. The second very important pointer is that Khushru Khan appointed openly in Delhi itself, for his own protection, thousands of his former Hindu warrior compatriots, at least 20 to 30,000 strong, in the Muslim army. The third pointer is that these maneuvers of his were highly resented by many of the Muslim grandees, but the innermost intention behind them was all kept so very secret that it is doubtful whether it had by that time become so crystal clear to Deval Devi or even to Khushru Khan himself, let alone the others. Faintly and slowly, yet surely enough, was that intention taking shape in their minds. The fourth pointer is that Khushru Khan incited the most incapable sultan, like Mubarak, to lead an expedition to the south to put down in good time the rebellions of the conquered Hindus in the Deccan, and he himself accompanied him as second in command. The Hindus were worsted a lot. Their immeasurable wealth taken as spoils of war filled the Sultan's treasury. Most probably, it is during this expedition that after the death of Shankardev of Devgiri, his relative, King Harpal Dev, rebelled and found the kingdom of Devgiri once again, for which he was defeated and ordered by the Sultan to be skinned alive and then put to death. And for defense of his religion, the royal Hindu warrior bore it bravely. Therefore, Mubarak returned with his army to Delhi. Because of these deeds of valor of Khushru Khan for the sake of a Muslim Sultan and the Muslim state, and because of his devastation of the Hindus, his rival Muslim grandees too could not breathe a single word against his unshakable faith in the Islamic religion. They could at most only whisper that there was danger of his overthrowing Sultan Mubarak and becoming the Sultan himself. But that he would be a Muslim Sultan and none else, there was not the least doubt. But if at this very time that future conspiracy of a Hinduistic revolution, which was very strange and unheard of before, had germinated in the minds of Khushru Khan and Deval Devi, it must have been kept highly secret with utmost caution. Very soon, Mubarak sent Khushru Khan to the Deccan for an extensive conquest, but he himself did not go with him. So complete was his faith in Khushru Khan. In this expedition, Khushru Khan subdued the king of Malabar too, and exacted therefrom immeasurable plunder in the name of Sultan Mubarak. But in this very campaign of South India, various open or secret Hindu conspiracies against the Muslim empire began to brew up from various quarters of the South Indian peninsula. The royal Hindu families of Warangal and Gujarat, the valiant Rana Hamir, the redeemer of Chittor, and the other Hindu chiefs, the religious leaders and propagandists in the various religious institutions and monasteries, like those of the Shankaracharya, and even the common people, were becoming restless and agitated with a common antagonism to the Muslim domination, and anonymous complaints by Khushru Khan's enemies had reached the ears of the Sultan of Delhi, to the effect that Khushru Khan was in some mysterious ways and most secretly connected with this universal discontent. Once in the open court of the Sultan at Delhi, there was a rumor which apprehended that instead of coming back to Delhi amongst the ring of his adversaries, Khushru Khan was about to escape to some neighboring foreign land by sea, with the immense wealth he had amassed in the south. One Muslim writer has gone to the length of saying that Khushru Khan was brought back to Delhi in fetters. With an exceptional daring and ability to cut off the strings of the net of inimical conspiracies with one stroke, Khushru Khan at once declared his intention to go back to Delhi in the grand manner of the conqueror of the south with all his army. For his secret accomplice, the former Hindu princess but now the Muslim empress, Deval Devi, must have been keeping him posted with every detail of the daily happenings at Delhi. Most of the Muslim writers mention Khushru Khan with utmost scorn and finish him within 4 or 5 lines only. The reason is plain enough. The Muslim historians can never bear Khushru Khan's taking the conceit out of the Muslim rule at Delhi. Even these Muslim historians have found it at places improper to distort and garble up the truth about Khushru Khan or to suppress it altogether. Khushru Khan went to Delhi with his victorious army and the immense spoils he had gathered in the Deccan. But why did he go there? Not only in Delhi, but even in the Deccan, a political rumor was secretly disseminated among the Hindu political circles that the Hindu leaders who were organizing Hindu revolts in the south against the Muslims were in collusion with Khushru Khan about some deep-laid conspiracy to disrupt the Muslim empire. In Gujarat, Khushru Khan's brother himself was the de facto ruler, while all the Rajputs were inspired by Rana Hamir to overthrow the India-wide unitary Muslim empire. And most wonderful of all was the fact that Sultan Mubarak's supreme commander and chief administrator himself, working as he was directly under Sultana Deval Devi's confidential orders, was taken in confidence by the Rajput leaders in respect of this daring plot to establish a Hindu empire. Such a rare occurrence of opposing forces is bound to astound history itself. Stand to reason it never can, till at least something miraculous happens. But something of the kind did begin to shape itself at the time. In the fiery brains of Sultana Deval Devi and Khushru Khan, there really was seething some such extraordinarily magnificent and by its very nature almost an incredible idea or plan, which seemed possible only to some mysterious intrigue and daring of a Narsinger. But neither their enemies nor their friends could breathe it openly. For with what magic wand was this supreme commander of Mubarak, the commander who had brought all the Hindu states in the Deccan to meek submission before the Muslim Sultan, who had very recently devastated the wealthy Hindu kingdom of Malabar and hoisted there the green Muslim flag of the Delhi Sultanate, and who, above all, had come to Delhi to lay down all that success, all that glory, As a humble homage at the feet of the Muslim emperor, how was he the sole supporter of the India-wide foreign and non-Hindu empire? He who, born though he was as a Hindu, had become converted to Islam. How was a man of such a status likely to transform so suddenly the whole Muslim empire into a Hindu one? No staunch Muslim could even dare express it openly. Khushru Khan and Deval Devi had been keeping up till the last the pretense of their being die-hard Muslims and of their greatest loyalty to the Muslim Sultan and his empire, so scrupulously and so thoroughly that even their direst enemies, who had dark suspicions of their having underground connections with the Hindu rulers, feared that were they personally to charge Khushru Khan before the Sultan in Delhi or in the open court, the Sultan would point out proofs to the contrary and outwit them forthwith. Even the top-level Muslim officials feared this eventuality. Whatever complaints had reached the journal populace of Delhi or the ears of the Sultan himself was so baseless and completely anonymous that nobody credited them with any more veracity or seriousness than they would do heresy reports or false accusations by some mischief mongers. As soon as he came to Delhi, Sultan Mubarak did not put him under heavy fetters in custody, as his Muslim enemies had expected, but being extremely pleased with the immense treasures Khan had laid down at his feet and the unlimited power he had gained for the Delhi Sultanate, Mubarak, on the contrary, conferred upon Khushru Khan the administrative, military, civic, and all other residual authorities. And if he had put anybody under arrest, it was the Muslim noblemen and the Khan-Khanas of the court who were dismissed for charging Khushru Khan unreservedly. On the other hand, in the regime of Khushru Khan as the chief administrator, the strictest bans against the Hindus introduced by Alauddin in former days were now being gradually relaxed. The exploitation of the Hindu Muslim farmers and the people in general was also stopped. The Hindus too got much relief in matters religious. The common discontent amongst the subjects against the tyrannical rule of the emperors was on the wane, and the whole credit of this comparatively happy state of things began to go very naturally to Khusru Khan, who was the chief of the imperial administration at the time. Gradually, by Sultan, the common people came to understand not the vicious and good-for-nothing Mubarak, but his all-in-all, valiant and popular administrator, Khusru Khan, and behind him loomed the Sultana Deval Devi, with whose internal and open support he could wield his authority. The Hindus began to look upon Khusru Khan as their savior, even though he was still a Muslim, because he had set them free to a great extent from the vexatious taxes and restrictions imposed upon them by Alauddin and the untold humiliation that they had to undergo. Khusru Khan began to be popular among the Muslim farmers and other citizens because of the relief they got from heavy taxes, and above everything else because of his military exploits, which had resounded throughout the whole of India, and his superb adroitness in the statecraft. Many of the high-ranking Muslim noblemen had enlisted themselves on his side. Seeing such a favorable opportunity, Khusru Khan and Deval Devi thought the right moment had come for them to proclaim boldly their grand scheme of political revolution. For one who hesitates to undertake this hazard under favorable circumstances must be a coward who would accomplish no daring feat. It was not merely a coup d'etat in a small state. It was an imperial revolution which sought to support the India-wide, unitarian, danger-free Muslim empire of the late Alauddin and of the present Mubarak, and to establish in its place overnight, most unexpectedly, a Hindu empire all over India. It was a religious revolution inasmuch as it sought to pull down the enthroned Muslim religion and to supplant it by the Hindu Vedic religion. That such a perfect revolution was most difficult, almost impossible to be accomplished, even if Hindu-Muslim wars were to be fought continuously for 500 years, was quite plain from the Arab invasions of Sindh in the 7th century and the later history of Muslim invasions till the time of Alauddin. But such a complete revolution was, in fact, brought about by the exceptional genius of Khushru Khan and Deval Devi, even if it was only for a short while. Had not the Muslim Sultanate conquered the Hindus completely by hard fighting for centuries and turned their country wholly Muslim? Then if Khusru Khan was able to wrench the imperial authority from the single Sultan, and if he were to ascend the throne of the Delhi Sultanate in the name of Hinduism, then the whole of the empire would necessarily be a Hindu one, with one stroke. It is this magic wand that Deval Devi, originally a Hindu princess, and Khusru Khan, the original Hindu youth, wielded, which worked as an unparalleled miracle, not only in India but in the whole human history. Having arranged every minute detail of the future revolution, most secretly, Khusru Khan humbly requested Sultan Mubarak, who had willingly allowed himself to be governed completely by the former. He said, "The thousands of Hindus of my caste, whom I have stationed in Delhi want to be converted to Islam with a proper religious ceremony, but they are fighting shy of doing so openly in the city. Some of them are really afraid to do so. Hence, I wish to bring the choicest among them into the palace today and convert them in due course." Under this pretext, Khushru Khan brought the hundreds of his bravest Hindu warriors in Delhi into the palace and housed them in the barracks for the imperial guards. One day in 1319 CE, at the dead of the night, suddenly there was a great turmoil in the palace, in the midst of which Sultan Mubarak was killed. Sultan Alauddin himself was similarly dispatched. Sultan Mubarak had dealt with Malik Kafur in this very way. The city of Delhi, which was quite used to such turmoils, began to whisper the next morning, "What terrible things happened in the palace last night?" Within a very short time, only a single proclamation of a political nature gave a violent shock to the whole capital and brought to it the rude realization that the previous night, Khushru Khan's people had effected at the same time an imperial and religious revolution by putting Sultan Mubarak to death. And it was immediately followed by another, that Khushru Khan had installed himself as a sultan. However, there was nowhere to be seen any immediate, open and organized opposition amongst the people to this unprecedented revolution. The fact that the new Sultan Khushru Khan married Sultana Deval Devi, the queen of Mubarak, as soon as the latter was killed, stirred the revolutionary curiosity of the people, but did not overawe them. For that was the age-old tradition of the earlier sultans. Qutbuddin's widows were married to the later sultans who succeeded him, while Alauddin's and his son's Khijr-Khan's widow, this very Deval Devi, was espoused by Mubarak himself. Quite consistent with this time-honored tradition was this act of Khushru Khan of marrying Deval Devi, the widow of the late Sultan Mubarak, with whom he had established very close contacts much earlier, and who was really his partner and perhaps a source of inspiration. But more startling than this was another proclamation made authoritatively and with every political formality by Khushru Khan and Deval Devi, which suddenly turned this political revolution in the royal palace into a religious one of a unique nature. The Hindus were thrilled with unlimited joy, while the Muslims were filled with the darkest apprehensions. The said proclamation made by Sultan Khushru Khan himself from his throne on the 15th of April 1320 CE said, "Although till today I was forced to lead the most detestable life of a convert to Islam, I am originally a son of a Hindu. The mainspring of my life is Hinduism, and the blood that throbs into my veins and arteries is that of a Hindu. Now that I have won independent and powerful status of a sultan for myself, I am hereby breaking off the shackles of conversion to a foreign religion, and I do hereby declare that I am a Hindu. I have now ascended publicly the throne of the vast and entire undivided India as a Hindu emperor." Similarly, Sultana Deval Devi, till very recently, was originally a Hindu daughter. Her husband, the Raja of Devgiri, Shankar Dev Yadav, was most brutally murdered, and she was treacherously captured from her father, sneaking miserably through dense forests to avoid seizure by the enemy. She was brought to Delhi and put to shame, an ignominious disgrace by being forced to marry Khijr Khan in the first place, and secondly after his brutal murder, Sultan Mubarak, who was killed in the coup d'etat last night. That Deval Devi is my queen, the empress of Hindustan of today. Being originally Hindu in flesh and blood and a Hindu royal princess, she also hereafter renounces disdainfully her shameful conversion to Islam, and henceforth will lead her life strictly according to Hindu religion. May this solemn vow of ours absolve us both of our former sin of forceful conversion. To refute or to challenge a proclamation of this nature came forth no stronger Hindu, nor even a single Muslim. As soon as this unheard of revolution was accomplished, this Hindu emperor disbursed among the thousands of soldiers the immense wealth which he had pillaged in his conquest of Malabar. Similarly, he increased the pay scales of both the Hindu and Muslim soldiers. Having won over his soldiery in this way, he introduced new reforms, gave to the farmers and common Hindu-Muslim citizens facilities, and allowed them concessions which they were never allowed to enjoy by any of the former sultans. Likewise, he set free thousands of Hindu prisoners who were interned as a diversion in religious persecution, and the hundreds of Muslims who were imprisoned simply because they were repugnant to the former sultans for one reason or another. It was no wonder that this Hindu emperor immediately became popular among the Hindus as well as the Muslims throughout his empire. It is needless to say that he also absolved all the Hindus of all the humiliating bans on their pilgrimages and holy baths. The jizya tax was repealed, and other degrading conditions which had been enforced upon them by Sultan after Sultan were removed forthwith. What wonder then if the whole Hindu world felt a thrill of joy and freedom, where at long last they had a savior. This Hindu emperor did not rest with a mere declaration of his adherence to Hinduism, but he fearlessly began to bring it into action in the presence of the Muslims. Idols of Hindu gods and goddesses were immediately installed in the holiest of places of Muslim civilization, the Divan-e-Am and Divan-e-Khas in the royal palaces of Delhi. All the worships and all the religious rites in royal palaces began to be performed according to the Hindu ritual. Loud chanting of Hindu mantras and singing of Hindu devotional songs took the place of the ayats of Quran. The enthusiasm and vigor of the Hindu citizens and especially of the Hindu soldiers in the capital knew no bounds. Just as formerly the aggressive Muslims completely demolished the godly idols in the Hindu temples and turned them into Muslim masjids immediately after they conquered any Hindu capital, so did these counter-revolutionary Hindus install new images of their gods in every masjid as a retaliatory measure and most ceremoniously converted the masjids into Hindu temples and filled them with loud chanting of mantras. It is only by this counterattack of the Hindu pariahs that the fanatic Muslims could ever have had any idea of the pangs of humiliation and grief that might have rankled in the hearts of the Hindu community, which had grown feeble because of their malady of religious tolerance, when the Muslims polluted the Hindu temples by cow slaughter and turned them into masjids. The one reason why the Hindu society failed to attempt the establishment of a Hindu empire at this most opportune moment was that the Hindus harbored serious doubts whether this undreamt of revolution would succeed. If that revolution were to fail, they feared, the followers would never escape complete annihilation, so the Hindu community only waited. The Hindu kings from Rajputana to Madurai did not protest against the revolution effected by this Hindu emperor. Availing themselves fully of this military coup in Delhi, they began to rule their Hindu states independently, as before. Their main fault was that at this greatest and rarest of opportunities, they did not make a well-organized effort to proclaim the independence of the Hindus and establish a united, strong, central imperial power at Delhi. And with this, we come to the end of this episode of the Indologia podcast. I hope you liked it. Do let me know what you think of the podcast. You can message me on Instagram, on Twitter. I am on all the social media platforms. The name is the same, Indologia, Indologia. Please give a good rating to this episode on Apple, Spotify, or whichever platform you are listening to this podcast on. Until the next time I see you, Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.